Hi, I'm JC Pohl, and welcome to this virtual assembly from Teen Truth. Today I want to talk to you about student leadership. I know with COVID-19, our lives have been thrown upside down. For many of you, you might have seen things that you were looking forward to being canceled or changed. You might have had sporting events you were looking forward to this spring being canceled or changed, or even things like graduation and prom. And I think as student leaders, we're being asked to do so much right now in our households and in our own lives. But what I want to do today is visit with you on maybe some things that we can still do to be a student leader. You know, we're used to being a student leader on campus or in life. Well, here's our opportunity to truly be a student leader in life and look at this situation maybe from a different lens. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you about today. You know, through the course of America, through the course of history around the world, we've seen hard times, difficult times like we're going through with COVID-19, give birth to things that are pretty amazing. You know, I used to work for Walt Disney. I spent many years working at Walt Disney Studios, and one of my favorite stories about Walt Disney himself is that, did you know that early on in his career, people actually told Walt that he wasn't a good artist and they never thought that he'd be anything? Of course, we've all heard the story maybe of Michael Jordan, who was cut from his freshman basketball team, or Oprah Winfrey, who was told that she'd never make it in news. All of these people faced adversity and they found a way to overcome it. And tragedies and difficult times in our country and in world history is also an opportunity to really for us to look at who we are and how we can find growth. And as student leaders, I think right now there's an opportunity for us to find growth for ourselves as leaders and for our school community in general. You know, one thing that's really interesting about Teen Truth, for those of you that don't know what Teen Truth is we were actually born out of the Columbine high school shooting. As you can imagine, Columbine was an event that affected our country greatly. It was a school shooting that happened many years ago, but it changed education forever, and it changed the way we looked at school culture and school safety forever. But one of the things that we found, you know, that was back actually when I was working at Disney. And as young filmmakers, one thing that we felt when Columbine happened was we'd turn on the news, you know, we'd turn on CNN, we'd turn on Fox, we'd open a newspaper or a web page, and we'd always see some expert or some adult telling us why those kids at Columbine did what they did. And the problem that we had with it as young filmmakers is we never really saw any students telling us why. And we really felt that students had something to say about the issue. So long story short, we ended up recruiting 5 students, giving them video cameras and asking them to film for an entire school year that year after the Columbine shooting. And what we got back was that unadulterated look in a teenage life. The kids really took the time to talk about some of the pressures that they were feeling at school, at home, in life, and why that might lead to something like Columbine. We were able to take all of that footage that those students shot and put into our first film, the Teen Truth Bully and School Violence film. The film actually premiered many years back, but it was very successful, actually broke records for our distributor, and became one of the top selling anti-bully films in the country. We went on to make films on drugs and alcohol abuse, body image and self-esteem, parenting and family communication, all shot from the student perspective. And now what we do is we travel to middle schools and high schools, hosting school assemblies and leadership summits around this idea of giving students a voice and asking you as student leaders to talk about what you're going through and discuss some of these social and emotional pressures that you're dealing with in life, on campus, or out in social media. And so one of the students we met along the way, as you can imagine, visiting so many schools, hosting assemblies, one of the students that we met along the way had an interesting story that I wanted to share with you today. This was a student by the name of Arjun. I met Arjun when he was a freshman. So he was about 14 years old, and I actually was able to host the school assembly at his school freshman year in kind of the beginning of the school year. Like it was probably August or September when I was there. And after the assembly, you know, our program is called Teen Truth. We try to inspire students to want to tell their truth. Arjun came up to me after the program and after the theater kind of cleared out. He said, you know, JC, I'd like to share my truth with you. He said, I'm new here on campus. I'm a freshman, and I got to tell you one thing, like, I hate it here. I don't like going to school here. Kids judge me, kids make fun of me, they exclude me, and I really don't want to be here. And my heart really went out to Arjun. It bothered me so much to see such a cool young man, a really great guy, struggling with so much inside because of the way that he was being treated at school and some of the pressures that he was going through. But I kind of got to know Arjun over the years and contacted his teacher and would kind of follow up. And I got the opportunity to go back to his school junior year and hosted the assembly. And afterwards, he came up and he told me, so much had changed in his life. And instead of me standing here and telling you what changed in Arjun's life, because that's not what Teen Truth is all about. We're all about giving students a voice. I want to let Arjun tell you what changed.
When I started high school my freshman year, I realized right away that school was going to be a challenge. Raghead and terrorist is how people saw me. My parents taught me to be proud of my Sikh religion, but at school I felt ashamed and disconnected. My traditional turban didn't make it easy for me to blend into the crowd of youth. I was the only male Sikh on campus, born into a family that had a distinctive dress style and embraced a religion that is foreign to most. I didn't want to ignore who I was, but I didn't want to be excluded. Throughout my entire freshman year, I was bullied for what I wore in my head, often called names and made to feel like I could never really be connected to school. I went to class, did my homework, and did my best to fit in. I learned quickly the school experience is about whether you feel a part of the community. I felt like I was not a part of anything. As my freshman year continued, I was harassed in classes and at lunch. It became so bad I wanted to cut my hair and not wear my turban. Then one day, the ASP president and vice president sat with me during a class and asked if I wanted to be more involved in the leadership activities. Honestly, I wanted to be part of anything. I participated in my first leadership activity, and finally, since I began school, I felt accepted and connected to something. I joined the leadership class shortly after and became involved in as many activities as possible. My involvement helped me develop new friends that I educated about the prejudice I face about my religion. Talking about my beliefs allowed my friends to realize they were just like me. I still face ridicule from some students, but leadership has empowered me to be proud of who I am and always stand up for what I believe in. And I have made it my personal goal to teach others to be more tolerant of our differences. Without the leadership family, I know I would not be the person I am today.
Such an amazing story of change, right? I just love Arjun's story so much. A young man who at 14 years old was in that crisis, was feeling that pressure, was losing hope and wanting to give up, found a way through it. And the way that he did that was by getting connected at school, by getting involved in student leadership. Once he found that group of students that he could connect with, everything changed in his life. And things changed dramatically for him at school. And one thing to be clear is Arjun, I know many of you as student leaders might be involved in certain clubs or involved in student council. Like Arjun didn't go on to be like the student council president or anything like that. He just went on to get involved in student leadership. And the thing that I love about his story, if you think back to what he said, what was the turning point in his story? Do you remember what the turning point was? Hopefully you do. It was when the student council president and vice president reached out to him freshman year. They saw what he was going through. They saw the pressure. They could feel the pain, and they reached out to that kid and they pulled him in. As student leaders, they pulled him in and they changed that dude's life. And I would argue they might have changed that kid's life forever. Arjun's gone on to become a friend of mine now. I love to stay connected with him. He ended up actually, enjoying his time in high school. You heard him talk about in the video how he loves to share his story with others and meet people who are different than him and, talk about our differences. And he's gone on now to graduate from the University of Oregon, where he was involved in a business fraternity that he really enjoyed. And we were so fortunate a few years back, if you look here, right here, this is a picture of him at the Oregon Student Council Conference, where he and I got to get up on stage and give a keynote. He got a standing ovation, a round of applause from those students at that conference. And it was so awesome to see Arjun just stand there in that strength and that confidence. And I can't help but wonder if any of that would have been possible if those student leaders didn't step in and change that guy's life. You know, there are students on your campus right now who may not be feeling the exact same pressure that Arjun's feeling. I mean, let's be honest, during COVID-19, they're literally probably not even on your campus right now, right? But they are in life, they are at home, they are in your neighborhoods, and they are feeling various social and emotional pressures. And I'm wondering how you as a student leader might be able to step in and help these students out, just like Arjun did. Because I believe that's what student leadership is all about. It's about taking action. It's about being willing to step in. And sometimes as student leaders, we find ourselves in a situation where maybe we don't take that step. We don't voice that voice. We don't make that positive comment on social media because we're not sure if we should step in. And I would argue it's so important for us to step in. But I know it's hard. You know, a little bit of background on me. I was a student leader in school. I was very involved in student council. I was actually president of my high school when I was in high school and captain of the football team. But I want to share with you a short story when I wasn't a leader. Or let's say, you know, I still was a leader, but I didn't act like a leader, right? I didn't take the actions that a leader must take. And I'll never forget this. It was junior year. And it was an evening when we were heading to a basketball game with our friends. And I had a friend, he was a good friend of mine. He played on our football team with us, and I played baseball with him as well. And I wouldn't say he was being bullied because he wasn't really being bullied. I would say he was being threatened, okay? He was being threatened by another group of guys, and he felt that after the basketball game that he might have to get in a fight. And I'll never forget, before he went in that game, he pulled this small nickel-plated handgun out of his pocket, and he showed it to me. Now, I'll be honest with you, growing up where I grew up in San Diego, California, maybe a little bit different than where you grew up, I don't know, but I never really been around guns. I didn't know anything about guns, and I made a huge mistake. You know, I didn't take that situation seriously. I figured we were big tough guys. You know, I'm there with my football friends, and whatever happened when we walked out of that gym that night, we could handle the situation. And I'll never forget it. We walked out of that gym, and those guys did show up just as promised. And I remember one of them like stepping right in front of me, grabbing my friend, throwing him up against a nearby wall. And as he flew through the air, I can still see him as he pulled that handgun out of his pocket. And I can still see that gun as it passed directly in front of my face. And I'm not talking like 6 feet from my face. I'm talking 6 inches, like I was right there. I can still see that gun barrel coming down upon me. Now, luckily, when he hit that wall, he dropped that gun and we all ran away. Nobody got hurt. But I can't help but wonder, as a student leader, how that evening might have gone different if I would have stepped up and taken action. You know, as a student leader, as someone who was involved in student council, a captain of the football team, I should have been the person to step forward and help my friend work through that without bringing the gun, right? I should have talked to our coach or one of my teachers or principals that was at the gym that night. And I could have, you know, maybe helped alleviate the situation or stopped the situation from happening. But I didn't do any of those things. And I think right now, while this situation is obviously not the same as COVID, it is similar in the sense that you have students in your community who might be dealing with certain pressures. You have kids right now on social media or via web conferencing or via video that you're meeting with and talking to that might be dealing with certain pressures in their lives. And I'm wondering what amazing thing could come out of this crisis for you. You know, for my friend, one thing that changed with him is that he was on the edge of basically being kicked out of our school junior year. He changed everything in his life. Senior year, he came back. He was a complete and total leader on campus, a huge leader on our football team, went on to become an amazing father with 3 great sons, and is even now like a really cool baseball coach in his community. Very well respected. But that night changed things for him, and I'm wondering if COVID-19 might change things for you and your students. And so in summary, since we're here talking about student leadership, let's talk about what leadership truly is. You know, the one thing I've found working in schools for the last 15 years, working at leadership conferences and speaking to student leadership groups, is I feel the word leadership, it gets thrown around a lot. It gets thrown around all over the place. There are leadership conferences, leadership classes, leadership groups, there's leadership coaching, so many things. And I think sometimes the word gets a little devalued. Like I speak sometimes at these leadership conferences, and maybe you've been to them before. The kids all show up in these t-shirts. They got these t-shirts from their school, or maybe you wear a leadership t-shirt on campus. And I swear, like some of the kids I meet, I think like they think being a leader is just about wearing that t-shirt, right? Or just about being invited to that conference. When leadership is about stepping forward, like those kids did with Arjun. Leadership is about doing the opposite of what I did at that basketball game. It's about stepping in. Now, I've spoken on over 1,000 campuses in the last 15 years. I've worked with millions of students, many of which are student leaders by yourself. And I've come to one conclusion during my time on the road, is that a student leader must act. We must act. We must act with compassion, and we must do it today. There's gotta be some urgency around it. Why do I say those words? Well, based on my time on the road, I've met many students, like I said, who maybe like me, they just made a mistake and they didn't step forward, or maybe they just haven't really been that good of a leader. Like you've met those students maybe. The captain on the team that's a really great captain, you know, on the field or on the court. But as soon as they step off the court or step off the field, they're not a very good leader. Or maybe you've seen those leaders in politics or in the news where they look like a leader, they hold a leadership role in a leadership position, but maybe they don't really act like a leader or talk like a leader. And so it really affects our ability to believe in them as a leader. So I believe when it comes down to student leadership, especially right now, we must act. And we must act with compassion. Compassion is an interesting word. It's love, it's empathy, it's life. It's about taking all that into one ball of energy and moving forward as a leader with compassion. And I would argue what those students did for Arjun was truly compassionate. They understood what he was going through. They showed that love and compassion and empathy. They sat down next to him and they reached out. And I'm wondering how you could do that right now. I'm wondering what kind of web video you could send to a student. You know, I'm wondering about the students on your campus who maybe sometimes sit alone at lunch or sit in the corner of the hallway. I'm wondering who's reaching out to them now, or how alone they might feel right now. Or even imagine some of the students on your campus that maybe live in poverty or have situations at home that are extremely difficult. And now a lot of us in many of our states are being confined to our homes. You reaching out to these students could be a game changer for them. And I would argue that we've got to act with compassion and we've got to do it today. There's got to be some urgency around it. We don't know what might happen later today, tomorrow, or next week. You know, there are students in your school community right now who might be cutting themselves because of the pain that they feel. There are students in your school community right now who might be thinking of suicide because some of the stuff that they're going through and the pressures that they're feeling. I mean, we have students who have walked onto campuses with semi-automatic weapons. So as leaders, we must act with compassion and we must do it today. And if you take away one lesson from this virtual assembly, I hope it's that. This could be an amazing opportunity for you as a student leader to step forward and change things. Change that direction for someone. Whether it's someone like Arjun, who was facing a hard time, someone like me, who was making a mistake with a friend and not stepping forward, or someone like Michael Jordan or Walt Disney, who freshman year or early in their careers were told that they weren't good. But we all know they found a way to be great. I'm wondering if you could be the voice and the person of leadership in that student's life to help them be great as well. And so if you enjoyed this assembly and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, or if you're a teacher or principal watching this assembly and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, I'd like to invite you to reach out to us at Teen Truth. We have a program called Teen Truth 365 where we will host interactive classes with you, where we can have you and I in a class via web video. We can have this conversation. We can talk about how we can take that action today and what you and your fellow classmates and your fellow student leaders can do to truly build school culture and get kids connected on campus. So it was an honor to be here with you today. I'm rooting for you during this time. You take care. You have a great day.